One of my favorite video games of all time is the original Shenmue on the Sega Dreamcast. In a pre-Grand Theft Auto 3 world, open-world adventure games weren't all that common, especially on the console side of things. When Shenmue came out in 2000 in the United States, it was an absolutely mind-blowing experience, unlike anything that we had ever seen before as gamers, as far as what you could actually do in a video game world. Of course, we ended up getting a sequel to the game with Shenmue 2, but that's kind of where the problem started to happen with Shenmue, was the fact of how this game was distributed and how this game came to be. Recently, we got Shenmue 3, and obviously the franchise isn't quite where it needs to be anymore to sort of continue this story. In today's video, I kind of want to talk about the rise and the fall of Shenmue as a franchise, and maybe potentially what we can do to sort of salvage what there is here, because I still think at its core, there's a very interesting experience, but you have to adapt with the times, and let's be real, in 2022, Shenmue just isn't what it was in the year 2000. So Shenmue is, of course, the brainchild of Yu Suzuki, who essentially wanted to make a Virtua Fighter RPG game. That's what this game actually started out life as. Originally, it started out life on the Sega Saturn. There's footage that you can see of the game running on the Sega Saturn, and it looks pretty impressive for the Saturn, but there was kind of a problem. Besides just the thing of technical limitations of the Sega Saturn, you of course have the whole thing that, well, the Sega Saturn didn't sell all that well in North America. Comparatively to the Sega Genesis, which absolutely dominated the North American market, the Saturn definitely struggled. So Sega decided, you know what? It's time for a new console. It's time for a powerful console, the most powerful console on the marketplace. And that, of course, is where we got the Sega Dreamcast, which came out on 9/9/99 in North America. Now, in December of 1999, a game came out in Japan for the Sega Dreamcast called Shenmue. And of course, this game was talked about in all the major video game publications as something that was just absolutely mind-blowing, completely different than anything that we had ever seen before. Shenmue ended up coming out in North America on November of 2000, and once again, this game completely transformed the video game world and the video game atmosphere as far as what you could do to sort of tell a story in a video game. Like I said, there were previous open world experience style games, but none of them really held a candle to what Shenmue was able to create. Basically, making a game where you have to figure it out on your own. You have to actually be a person, go around town, talk to different people, try to find clues. And this whole style of game, this whole open world style of game with a day and night, a weather cycle, businesses that ran at certain time frames, and you would have to go to these businesses at a certain time frames, a fully functioning arcade within the game itself, and of course the gameplay of it as well. Now, the gameplay didn't really focus too much on the fighting side of things. There was a lot of quick time events, which once again was something very new to video games, where you would have to press a button at a certain time in order to avoid an attack or something like that. And then of course there was a full fighting system within the game with lots of moves, and you had all the moves at your disposal. For the most part, there were some scrolls that you had to find, but beyond that, you would actually just have to practice your moves to get better, to be a more effective fighter for the situations where you actually need to fight. Think about real life. You're not just going around fighting people all the time or shooting people like you do in a Grand Theft Auto. No, you fight when you have to, when the situation calls for it. And the whole story of Shenmue was really one of the driving points of this game, one of the most important things about this game. Very early in the game, I don't think this is a spoiler as this game is over 20 years old now, your father is killed by a man named Lon D. You, of course, have to try to avenge your father, find out why your father was killed by Lon D, and that's what sort of catapults the story. Now, one of the main things that went along with the original Shenmue game was that you knew you weren't getting a full-on conclusion at the end of it. Yu Suzuki himself had said that he wanted to make multiple Shenmue games, and we're not just talking 2 or 3, we're talking up to 10, 11, there was a lot of story to tell here. Now, of course, with a video game this size and this scope, and being one of the first times we'd ever seen a video game like this, the budget was immensely expensive. And the Sega Dreamcast didn't exactly light the world on fire. It was a phenomenal system, don't get me wrong. But when the PlayStation 2 came out and said, hey, we have a DVD player on it, and we're pretty much the cheapest DVD player on the market if you want to watch DVDs, plus we have a whole plethora of games, obviously the whole narrative shifted. The whole narrative changed with the success of the Sega Dreamcast. Now, the sequel to Shenmue did come out on the Sega Dreamcast with Shenmue 2, but only in Japan and only in Europe, because the North American Dreamcast market just pretty much shriveled up. Now, with Shenmue 2, it of course did come out on the original Xbox, because Sega and Microsoft had a very interesting partnership. Really, if you want to consider a system to be the Dreamcast 2 that everyone tries to prophesize and hope and claim is going to come one day, that was the original Xbox. Look at how many direct sequels we had and new versions of games that were Sega classic IPs that came out on the original Xbox. Of course, with Shenmue 2, you have a whole change of scenery. You're going from essentially a small, isolated village in Japan to a bigger city of Hong Kong. Once again, trying to track down Lan Di and find out more information on what is happening, why this happened to your father. Now, what's cool about Shenmue 2 is it does a really good job of expanding on what we got in Shenmue 1. Yes, there's pretty much the similar style of gameplay, but there's more. There's more fights, there's more mini games, there's more things to discover, more collectibles to buy, more areas to visit as well. Just a phenomenal game, and once again, a proper sequel that continues the story. It doesn't wrap up the story, but enough things happen within the story to make you satisfied, to make you hopeful for the Shenmue 3, and then, well, yeah, it took a while for Shenmue 3 to come out. Yu Suzuki pretty much just disappeared from the video game landscape, but then hey, he popped up again, and Shenmue 3 was actually a thing. Being somewhat funded by Deep Silver and Sony themselves, along with a Kickstarter campaign that raised over $6 million, everyone got really excited for Shenmue 3 and the progression of the series. It's like, hey, at this point we realize that Shenmue isn't the huge behemoth that you can make 10 or 11 games out of. Let's just try to wrap this up, or at least make it to the point of where Shenmue 3 becomes a popular enough game to where we could continue this franchise. Of course, with a lot of Kickstarter projects, there is that little bit of disappointment when the final product comes out. Some end up being great, some end up not quite hitting the mark like we wanted to. And Shenmue 3, somehow, some way, just completely missed the mark of what Shenmue was all about. You see, the whole thing was Yu Suzuki wanted to make the game a little bit more accessible, but in making the game more accessible, you kind of hinder one of the best parts of the game, and that is the fighting. Now, the fighting in Shenmue 1 and 2 wasn't great. It could be a little bit clunky at times, especially with the camera angles, but it played like a proper fighting game. You would have to do button inputs in order to do it. Directional and button inputs would make you do different moves. There was a punch button, a kick button, a dodge button, a grab button. It felt very intuitive, and it felt very fluid, and it felt like something that you could actually master, where with Shenmue 3, they're just like, just press buttons. Just press buttons, and the way to level up was not by practicing your moves, it was actually by doing these mini games that, well, just absolutely sucked. They weren't fun, they were tedious, they were boring, and it was just like, this isn't a good decision. This isn't making me want to level up my moves to make it better, because really everything in the fighting of the game was based on numbers and not skill. It was about how high your numerical data was. If your numerical data for your individual moves was high enough, then you could beat a certain enemy and progress through the game. I thought Shenmue 3 looked fine for the most part. It graphically looked pretty pleasing, and I thought that, you know, they crafted a very interesting enough world that you end up visiting throughout the small village and then the main town area that you come across. But the problems with this game were just so infinite, and the problems with this game were just, well, they didn't really do much to advance the gameplay. It was more of just like a love letter to Shenmue fans, which I get, don't get me wrong. But the fact of the matter is, you somehow smeared blood all over this love letter by crippling the fighting system, by introducing a stamina system in the game that's actually contingent on your health within the game. So if you decide to run through an area, hey, you're draining stamina. Hope you don't come across an enemy that you have to fight, because your stamina is going to be low, which means that your health is going to be low, which means that you're going to get your ass kicked. You see what I'm saying with Shenmue 3? I don't think they needed to reinvent the wheel. I think Shenmue fans still wanted a game that played like Shenmue, just maybe a little bit more modern. And the fact that they got rid of some of the core mechanics of it and just really changed the core mechanics, such as the fighting and the stamina system, you know, it was definitely disappointing. But I think Shenmue fans could look past all that. I really do, because we had been waiting so long for this third entry in the franchise. We'd been waiting years, decades for this game to actually come out, to continue or possibly finish the story, finding Lan Di, finding out why he killed my father, finding out and getting justice for my father's death. But here's the biggest problem of Shenmue 3. Nothing happens in the story. Literally nothing. Literally nothing. What you know at the start of Shenmue 3 is pretty much what you know at the end of Shenmue 3. There's no justice, there's no vindication, there's nothing that really advances things along within the story. At least with Shenmue 1 and 2, you were learning about things constantly. You were learning about where you needed to go and who you needed to talk to and these different characters that came along. With Shenmue 3, you literally know what is happening at the start of the game and nothing really changes at the end of the game. The story is completely negligible in this game, and this is a game based on story. So why would they do this? Why would they not try to conclude things or at least progress things along? Because you have Yu Suzuki, who still thinks that in 2022 and beyond, Shenmue is going to be a multiple part series. There's going to be a Shenmue 4, 5, and 6 because this is what he wants. There's a little bit of delusion, I feel, with this whole situation because the market has pretty much told you that, you know, Shenmue has seen its day. It's come and gone. It was a great game at the time. I'm actually replaying through Shenmue 1 right now, which is making me want to make this video, but the catastrophic dropping of Shenmue 3, the fact that nobody bought it beyond really Kickstarter backers, the fact that you raised $6 million on Kickstarter, you really took the money from the fans of Shenmue and gave them a product that make them happy in terms of, you know, progressing the storyline. You kind of have gotten a lot of ill will from this. You've kind of negated your whole fan base and made them, well, not really trust you. So then we've seen the rise and fall of Shenmue from one of the most interesting and innovative games of literally all time to Shenmue 3, which is just sort of retreading, messing up things that were core mechanics of the first two games and not doing anything with the storyline. So how do you save this? Because obviously there's not a market out there for Shenmue to be this huge cultural phenomenon anymore, especially when you have games like Yakuza, which is what Shenmue 3 probably should have been as far as advancing the series. So what do? There is a little glimmer of hope. There is a little bit of light at the end of this tunnel, and I think it comes from the fact that we now have a Shenmue anime. Now, you guys know me, or maybe you don't know me, maybe this is your first time here. Welcome if that's the case. I don't do anime. The only anime I've ever really watched was Initial D. I watched like the first season of it because I like cars. I tried to watch a few Dragon Ball episodes. I was like, this is beyond me. I can't do it. But the Shenmue anime is actually fantastic. You know why? Because it follows the story of Shenmue. It's literally just a retelling in a very similar manner to the original Shenmue. If you've played Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2 and you understand the story, you understand the mechanics, you understand where Ryo goes within these games and the things that you encounter, it's literally just a retelling of it in an anime style. So here's what you do. Yu Suzuki, you have to swallow your pride with this. You have to realize that this behemoth that you wanted to create, it's seen its day. It's had its chance to shine, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You, at the end of the day, can rest on your pillow knowing that you created Shenmue, a game that really turned the video game landscape and the video game sphere on its head, upside down, by doing things that nobody thought were possible within a video game. But you have to accept the fact that the time has come and gone for this franchise. Finish up the story within the anime. You can simply do this by making the anime episodes. Right now, the anime as it stands at the time of the filming of this video basically covers up till the end of Shenmue 2. Shenmue 3 was an absolute wash anyways. Nothing happened in that game. Yeah, you go to different places, but you don't really know anything more so by the end of Shenmue 3 than you knew at the start of Shenmue 3 as far as the story is concerned. So let's just pretend that that didn't happen, or do like a 20-minute recap of what happens in the story, the minimal things that happen of Shenmue 3, and make an hour-long Shenmue 4 conclusion. Give us that feeling. Give us that conclusion that we need. I will give you a stupid amount of money for that. I will give you a stupid amount of money for that you don't even have to pay me back for it. I don't care. You know, I understand this would be an investment that I wouldn't see any returns on, but I feel like it's worth it. I feel like it's worth it for Shenmue fans, for me, who was in Georgia visiting Pecker Dupree, my best friend at the time, and playing Shenmue and being just absolutely amazed by this game. Being amazed at how you could just go into a business and talk to the owner, how businesses had a day and night cycle, how there was an arcade that fully functioned and you could play video games within this arcade. That's a feeling that I don't know if I'll ever have something similar to that again. And I don't feel like Shenmue could ever give me that sort of feeling again, because I've already experienced it and I've seen where this franchise is going. I've seen what this franchise is trying to do, and it's not the right direction. Make an hour-long special with the anime. Conclude the story. At least give the people who have supported you for over 2 decades now that conclusion, because we deserve it. We've earned it. We've given you our money year after year. We've followed Shenmue. We've tried to wish Shenmue into existence as being this huge dominant powerhouse within video games, and it's not. It once was, but now it's not. It's time to swallow your pride, Yu Suzuki. It's time to just give people the conclusion that they want, unless maybe you don't know the conclusion. Maybe you planned on this franchise going, 30 years with multiple entries, up to 10, 11, 12 different entries, and you haven't really concerned yourself with the end result yet. And if that's the case, I will write the damn ending to this game and give people the conclusion that they want, because we deserve better. The rise and fall of Shenmue is something that I've watched very closely, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's just a damn shame. It's a damn shame. Make the hour-long anime special. Kickstart it if you have to. I'll give you gobs of money for it. Let us have our conclusion. Let us have our inner peace. Let us have the ending that we deserve. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is really just from the heart with this, just something I've been noticing and something I never really talked about with Shenmue, and considering it's one of my favorite franchises right alongside of games like Metal Gear and stuff like that, I felt like I wanted to talk about it. Nobody's gonna watch this video probably, but hey, whatever. It's something I wanted to make, and that's all that matters. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Give me your feedback in the comments section down below, and as always, thank you for watching this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit that bell notification as well so you know whenever I upload videos, because sometimes I just get a wild hair up my ass and I want to talk about something that nobody else is talking about. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.